Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, sim racing fans from whatever corner of the globe you're tuning in from tonight. Welcome to Suzuka for the second round of the second season of the Sim Racing Hub International GT4 Championship. I'm Tim Fulbrick, and joining me in the virtual commentary box, my good friend, partner in crime, and whatever kind of name you want to throw at him, Steve Proudly. Steve, we had a really exciting race to kick off the season at Brands Hatch, and we're hoping for more of the same this evening.
Yeah, absolutely. Suzuka GT4s, it's going to really sort of show a little bit of a performance deficit, I would say, between some of the cars. Some of the cars are going to fly around here, some of them are going to struggle, and some of them are just going to look really good in alien hands. Yes, we had a fantastic race last time out. The weather was definitely against the drivers, but a couple of them showing some real skill to bring the cars home, and some phenomenal pace from some of the drivers. Really, really exciting, and I'm hoping to see more of the same tonight.
So as Steve touched on there in the opening round at Brands Hatch 2 weeks ago, was a rather rained out and washed out affair. The former venue for the British Grand Prix was avidly drenched. Drivers were taking to the wet circuit, and indeed for both qualifying and the race were forced to contend with a very damp track indeed. But it was Sem Spenkelink who rose to the top, taking a dominant victory, the Season 1 champion, seemingly untouchable in the opening round. He was joined by Tim Krul and Daniel de Swart on the podium, who utilised a rather alternate strategy that had me and Steve scratching our heads early on, but he was able to make it work by pitting early. A really exciting race to kick off the season. But as we move towards qualifying and the race again this evening, Steve, we know that strategy is something that drivers have to contend with, me owning to the race being 60 minutes with a mandatory pit stop. It's not just a flat-out sprint from flag to flag.
No, it's not. There are options available, and it's always good to have options because, you know, when you get races with grids this big, sometimes, I won't say it's inevitable, but you get contact. You may require that early pit stop, and all is not lost. You know, you can literally pit within the first lap of the race, as it were, and still get out there and not have to double stack on the pits, as it were. You've done your mandatory and you just race to the end of the race. Just touching on the strategy last week with the early pit stop, He did mention, obviously, in the interviews that he'd actually started the race with qualifying fuel, hadn't he? So that literally that it wasn't really a
Yeah.
strategy call. It was more of a oops, I've made a mistake. But it really paid off. Absolutely phenomenal drive to caused himself some some work having to fight his way through the grid, but he did it all the same, and a really well deserved finish. It was great drive.
We do like to see the drivers here at SRHI being worked hard, and it's a different challenge again this evening. The 3.613 kilometre Suzuka circuit might be more known for its open wheel racing, and indeed the dramas of Formula One seasons past, the likes of Senna and Prost having, well, the peak of their rivalries playing out at this iconic Japanese circuit. But drivers forced to contend with a different challenge altogether. It looks like we're going to have a dry race this evening with some overcast conditions, which can affect how the car feels and handles here in Assetto Corsa Competizione. But with the track being registered as fast, the drivers are going to have plenty of grip to play with. And being a bit of a sim racer yourself, Steve, and indeed myself, to see a track being registered as fast, conditions 16 degrees C, it's very, it's nice, comfortable conditions. You're going to be able to lean on the car and push things a little bit harder than maybe in other conditions.
Yeah, definitely, because the thing with the GT4s is that sometimes you can struggle to get enough heat into the tyres depending on the setup, depending how hard you can lean on them. But I would say the track conditions, the temperature today here at Suzuka are pretty good, because you're not going to overwork them. The track, I don't think the track's going to get to a point where it's too hot and you're going to take too much life out of the tyres too early on, because again, when you're racing this many cars, it's very easy to get sucked into battles that absolutely sap the life out of your tyres and your brakes, and before you know it, when you get to the last 10-15 minutes of a race, you may just be nursing a car home, and you could lose positions. But as we speak now, the cars are out on track for qualifying, so we'll probably just jump out onto the live cam and let's see who can put the fast laps in to start with.
For sure, Steve. So as the drivers head out on track, you can see on screen here Nicholas Malott in the number 4 Porsche Motorsport car. He finished inside the top 10 last time out. Unfortunately, locked in a bit of a battle out the race, was unable to benefit from the conditions, but a strong showing to finish 6th place in what was a tricky race. To recap the format for this evening, drivers will go out on track for a half an hour qualifying session, attempt to set their best time, which will give us the grid for then a 1 hour race where drivers must complete a mandatory pit stop at whatever time they choose. And that, as we have discussed, opens the door for some interesting strategy. Drivers could maybe pit early, get out of some traffic, get out into some clean air and set their best lap times, because at a track like Suzuka, Steve, although we've seen it with open wheel racing that overtaking can happen, it does lend itself to some processional races at times. You've got to force your way through on the driver in front, and particularly have a pace advantage over them to really make something happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting to see sometimes, depending on the track very much so, but you can be where you can catch a car very quickly. You can be good half a second, even up to a second a lap faster than somebody. But on certain tracks, the overtaking opportunities just don't present themselves, and if you've got someone in front who can just drive the line, hit the apexes, and not necessarily have to defend too hard, just drive consistently, they can be very difficult to get past. And we've seen that before, as we've just seen a Ginetta. I'm not sure if he's getting out of the way there, or he's just he's lost it and put it onto the grass, but no harm, no foul there. But yeah, so it can be very difficult, and it's frustrating as a driver sometimes when you see that you have got so much more pace and you are just stuck behind that car in front, and there's not a lot you can do about it apart from ride as close as you dare behind him, maybe give him a flash of the lights. I know not everybody agrees with that, but I don't see any harm in it myself if you can just apply the pressure to the guy in front and just try and force that error, because it's not always about your driver skill. Sometimes in of taking the opportunities, as it were, it's about creating those opportunities, and applying pressure is probably the best way to create opportunities sometimes.
Exactly. We discussed pretty heavily last week in the rain at Brands Hatch, unforced errors. That's a term I wouldn't be surprised to hear us using again this evening. If if you do make a mistake, a circuit like Suzuka, it's not one of these modern Grand Prix tracks where you have acres of runoff to exploit and gather your thoughts and get back on track. If you make a mistake here, it does punish you. The grass, the gravel, you'll lose a lot of time, as we see Denise Pope in the 79 Wild Things racing Ginetta, exploring the track limits on the run through the two Degners, then climbing up the hill towards the hairpin. But one of the most enjoyable things about this circuit, Steve, is indeed the mix of corners. There's such a variation between the S's, the hairpin here that Pope's just driving through as we speak, and also the flat-out blasts through 130R and into the tricky chicane to end the lap at the Casio Triangle. It really is a driver's circuit.
Yeah, absolutely, and as you said there, it's all about consistency and the mistakes, because even through the hairpin where we saw Denise coming out, that you've got to get such a good exit there because you are on the throttle hard for such a long period of time after you're exited that chicane, and it literally only takes that little bit of wheel spin, that little lift if you're pushing the front too hard and it's going towards the outside of the track. The slightest little bit of mistakes like that can cost you big time here, and you might not think so initially, but the time that the car behind will gain by being able to apply the throttle for longer it can be massive. It can be enough to actually just drive past you. So you've got to be very precise. The faster circuits, we just see Denise there demolishing a couple of cones. But the faster circuits like this, they do tend to punish you harder because they do have that, percentage of the circuit where you are on the full throttle, and that's what makes the difference.
Indeed. So with just under 24 and a quarter minutes still remaining, we see that the first times are coming in at the moment. Is Luke Pound in the 166 Aston Martin that's gone fastest. He's top of the times with a 2-minute 11.901. I wouldn't be surprised to see a few other drivers go quicker. Notable absentee from this evening is, of course, Sem Spenkelink not taking part owing to outside commitment. So we'll be missing him this evening, but that presents an opportunity for someone else to maybe get atop of the pile. We know how quick Sem is, and the guys are often joking about he's the man to beat, but at the moment it looks like it is Luke Pound top. Then it is Yannick Valenduk in the 301 BMW. Yannick was actually talking about an injury he sustained. He's got a shoulder injury, and he's received permission from his physiotherapist to allow him to race this evening, which is always good. So to see him second at the moment, only 2.5 tenths off provisional pole, is certainly a grand effort from him. You see him just running wide slightly, but there might be something, not only tyre wear and fuel wear and the car kind of letting go a little bit towards the end of the race. Yannick might have to take into account his shoulder starting to get fatigued towards the end of the 1 hour race. But as the drivers are setting their first times, it looks like Valenduk's in control at the moment in second, with Lermans third, Nicolas Malott in fourth. Here is Arjen Lermans in the 46 Camaro in nice control through the S's at the moment. And the Camaro is a very unique car amongst the GT4s, isn't it, Steve? We talk about the Camaro and also the Maserati, which has no ABS, no traction control. It's nice to see Alexander Witter in the 77 Maserati in 7th place at the moment. But like the Camaro, these big kind of brutish machines, if you can get on top of that power and on top of the torque and unique characteristics of them, you can extract some fantastic speed from them.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think the Camaros, it's a bit of a sleeping giant, isn't it? Because when the GT4 DLC came to ACC, it wasn't anybody's first choice car, but we are seeing it become more and more popular as Lohmann just goes a little bit wide there, completely wide, misses the apex, but he is still 3/10 up on his personal best at the moment, so that will take him to within half a second of that pole time, which is just 2 minutes 11.277 now, so a little bit of a gap opening up at the front there, but as I say, Lohmans is still 3/10 up. He's carrying that advantage round at the minute, so we may see him go up into potentially third, if not second place, if he can gain a little bit more. But this car, as you said to me, is very much becoming a more popular choice, and there are more drivers picking it, and there are more drivers actually having success with it as well, so maybe it is a car to watch.
Definitely, maybe they're changing their minds, turning away from the Caymans and Mercedes and Aston Martins that we have seen so popular and successful in other GT4 series, and trying something a bit different. But of course, it's all about having fun, and if you're having a good time in the Camaro, then why shy away from it? But as Steve was talking there, Danny de Swart going off in the 57 Mercedes is new fastest time, 2 minutes 11.277. Now the benchmark for everyone else to beat.
Luke Pound is half a second up at the moment as we're talking, so he's certainly on a charge. He's 6/10 down at the minute. That half a second he's got at this point, if he can carry it, will get him a heck of a lot closer.
So we'll keep a track of this 166 Luke Pound Racing Aston Martin Vantage on the run through Dunlop, down this slight gradient towards the Degners, two of the trickiest corners on the track. In fact, they're all difficult in their own unique way, sometimes breaking over the curb on the left-hand side, chucking it in through the camber and running out over the curb and Astro on the left-hand side, climbing back up the hill towards the hairpin, trying to settle the car through the kink as you drop the anchor into the slowest corner on the track, using the camber that is available there, and all the track on the exit is Luke to then get the power down through this long right-handed section. The track seems to undulate slightly on the run up towards Spoon.
7/10 up as well now, 7/10.
And so he's found time through that technical section in the run into Spoon, through the first left-hander, then getting the card slowed again. It's so difficult to run out wide. Drivers will probably use a more rearward brake bias to help the car get turned in, using all the track available on the exit now as he dips down, and then the run up the hill towards 130R. It's really a corner where you have to hang it all out, throw it all in, cash your chips in and see what you get at the end of it. As Pound turns in there, a nice apex, clips the curb on the inside, doesn't run too wide. That's somewhere where you can get a track limits violation into the final chicane. Steve, is he up or down on his time?
He's up. He's 5/10. He has lost a little bit, but he's still half a second up as we speak. And if he gets a good exit, he's lost another 10th, so he's 4/10 up. He's obviously, the exit wasn't quite as good as his previous, but he's still 4/10. It's definitely going to be an improvement. He's going to jump into second place.
There we go. Just as you say that, Steve, Luke Pound jumps up to second place with a very tidy lap indeed. Still 2 tenths to find if he wants to topple Daniel de Swart. But here's Patrick Tractor then in the 313 DC Racing Ginetta on the run down the hill towards the two Degners. He's looking in fine form at the moment. Our second fastest Ginetta on track at the moment.
Yeah, he's up 4/10 as well at the minute, and the Ginetta I think is going to be an interesting car to watch, because through the twistier stuff it's going to be up there with the best of them, but we know that it just lacks a couple of gears for the top speed. It really does struggle on the faster stuff. So the start finish straight, we may see some of them being a little bit of a sitting duck, but the Ginetta certainly a good car through the corners. And Patrick is still 4/10 up. He's carrying that time gained at the moment. Just needs a good exit here to get onto that power as soon as he possibly can without running wide, but he's aborted that lap by the looks of that.
Surprising then, as he was going faster, as we cut down to our second place finisher last time out of Brands Hatch, Tim Kroll here in the 933 Porsche Cayman on the run up the hill towards the hairpin. He's currently in 9th place as it stands, a full second to gain if he wants to be on the front row. A number of drivers heading to pit lane, maybe to don a new set of tyres, maybe refuel the car. But you wouldn't refuel it much, just a few litres to get you round on fumes. You want the car as light as possible before making sure the thing is filled to the brim for the 60-minute race after. But Tim Kroll looking in fine form at the moment. I wonder if he's going to be able to better his time.
Yeah, absolutely, and like you say there, they're going to be going back in for some fuel. I mean, Tim's actually a tenth down at the minute, but it's such a long lap here at Suzuka, and the GT4s do take usually sort of 2 or 3 laps to get heat into the brakes, into the tyres, and really get the optimum. So with 15 minutes left to go and there's such a long lap, there's not a lot of time really to go gather some more fuel up and come out again. Really, if you're going to do it, within the next couple of minutes is the time to do it, and then get out there, find yourself some space. And I don't know, like you say, we're both sort of drivers as well, Tim, and speaking for myself, I need 2 or 3 laps minimum, just flying laps, to get to my best. I'm not very good at coming out of the pits and just banging that hot lap straight in.
Yeah, as we speak, ACC, I mean, is a sim that does demand that you treat the tyres well and indeed get the pressures up. And a man who looks like he's got the pressure up at the moment, Yannick Valenduk, looking in form despite that shoulder injury we discussed earlier as he rounds the spoon corner, running slightly wide on exit. Wonder if he'll be able to challenge those ahead of him. 6th place at the moment. You've got to say it's a very valiant effort considering that he is carrying that injury on the run down towards the 130R corner in the Casio Triangle complex. The nose dips on that BMW under the brakes as he throws the car in. Runs out wide though, so I wonder whether this lap might be invalidated as he turns into the Casio Triangle.
If it's not invalidated, it is showing him as being 3/10 up at the moment, but it doesn't tell us if it's invalidated or not. So all we can say is he's 2/10 up now. He lost a bit of time, but it'll be interesting to see if it counts. If it does, it will bump him up into somewhere around about the 5th place. There we go. So it was valid. Great lap.
Fantastic use of the available track limits there. Sometimes you can just about escape running 4 wheels over the white line on the exit of 130R, and it's one of the only opportunities on the lap that you do have to exploit the white lines and indeed the curves. Dennis Berkman here in the number 5 Porsche.
4/10 up, Tim. Sorry,
4/10 up.
Yep.
Yeah, so he looks to be improving. That will see him move slightly further forward. Only a couple of positions though. Might be able to knock Alexander Witter in the 77 Maserati from 13th place, but we'll follow him as he runs up towards 130R with just under 15 minutes to go, so halfway through.
Yeah, he got a good exit there because he's now half a second up. He's gaining time all with every corner. He's 6/10 up now, so he's carried it through there. As long as he's just stayed within those track limits, we're all good. And if he can get the final chicane right, time to be lost and time to be gained here. He just needs to really get the power applied as smoothly as possible and onto full throttle as quick as possible. He's lost a 10th, but he's still half a second improvement here, which will take him up to around about 13th place, I think, maybe even 12th. There we go.
So there we go, Berkman moving up to 12th place, just outside the top 10 by a couple of tenths. Rick Lotterman here in the BMW. A second up, a fantastic lap so far. If he can keep it together on the run to the line, we could see him leapfrog all the way up above Alexander Witter in the 77, as we just mentioned. Let's stay with Lotterman as he crosses the line, and indeed, well, he goes up to 16th. Lost a few tenths maybe there on the exit of the Casio Triangle. It looked like he got a bit squirrely on the exit, and that's just going to cost you all that time on the run down to the start-finish line. Yeah,
and we've got Denise Pope here who at the moment is half a second up, and she's got a good exit there because the time's stable. She's still got that half second she's gained, and she's carrying it through now, full throttle. And the Ginetta sounds lovely, does that Ginetta, and I do like the look of the Ginettas as well. I think they're one of my favourite GT4s. If they're not maybe the quickest, they're probably one of the trickiest to extract all of the potential out of, but Denise doing a pretty good job at the minute. She's just lost a 10th, but she's still 4/10 up on a personal best at the moment, so looking to potentially just go up maybe up to 22nd if she can carry this speed, but let's keep an eye on her and let's see how she goes through 130R now.
So the Ginetta then, rounding 130R. Denise running, well, very conservative it seems with track limits. She obviously wants to make sure this lap is approved by the in-game stewards as she turns the right and then the left through the Casio Triangle over the curbs, and then staying well off that curb on the right-hand side. Doesn't want to destabilise the little G55 GT4 on the run down towards the start-finish line.
She's lost it.
So she's lost
slight
that time.
Improvement, I think, but
yeah, not enough to move up any position, so she remains in 23rd position then behind Eichenboom in the 31 Mercedes. Here we have Stephen Arvidsson, who I suppose is going quicker as well in a Ginetta.
He is indeed, Tim. Yeah, he's 4/10 up at the moment. It's interesting now, obviously, with only 12 minutes left. Just looking down the timing board that I've got for operating the cameras, and there is very, very few people improving at the moment. Everybody's either pretty much the same as they were, or in the red. They're not going as quick as they were. But Stephanie's actually 1.1 seconds up now, so he's going to jump up that board quite a way.
Let's see where he goes then. Yes, indeed, Arvidsson up to 23rd, actually knocking Denise Pope from that position. So there's a nice fight between the Ginettas there in the AM class. On your left-hand side, the timing tower, the drivers with a white background to their number, indeed fighting for the overall championship. Those with a red background fighting for the AM championship. And here's Xander Vale. He's improving then in the golden black Porsche.
He's indeed, he's 4/10 up at the moment, so that's going to be a good improvement for him if he can carry that 4/10. That's going to catapult him up to around the 4th or 3rd spot for sure.
So we'll see whether Vale can indeed hike himself up towards the top couple of rows, and through the hairpin there, slightly uncomfortable maybe onto the curb on the inside.
I think everybody heard me, Tim, now, because we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 of the top 7 are actually on better laps. So Tim Kroll in front of Sander is 3/10 up, Nicholas Melotti's a 10th up, Luke Pound has lost it, but he was a 10th up on the current pole time as well.
So they're taking advice from our broadcast director and co-commentator Steve Proudley this evening, and all deciding to give it a better go than they have done so far, with 10.5 minutes to go at the moment. Luke Pound leads the way from Danny de Swart, Michael Hutman and Yannick Valenduk in fourth, with Malott, Kroll, Vale, as we're watching him at the moment, on the run up through to 1:30. It looks to be a relatively in control lap. Fingers crossed for him. He has time in hand still over his best. We might see him move forward, Steve.
He's only about a 10th. He's just skipping between a 10th and 0, so he's literally on the brink. I don't think we're going to see much of an improvement, and if we do, Tim Kroll he's only a 10th up now. He's lost a bit of time, and in fact he's actually lost that as well. So yeah, I need to give them another talking to, because they've just not managed to maintain it for the full lap. I think there's another business opportunity. We could have SimSport Solutions Team Radio, I think.
Team Radio, yeah, race engineering solutions or something like that.
Yes. Yeah, we'll work on that off air, I think.
Yeah, I'll get my plans together, and I'll see if I can lend myself to that as well. But here we go. Michael Hutman then in the 84 Camaro rounds the final corner down the pit straight. Let's see if he can improve on his time. A 3/10 margin to pole, and he does go quicker, but it's not enough to gain a position. Still, the best part of 2.5 tenths down on Luke Pound here, who's having to avoid a Aston Martin that was run off there into the runoff round the right-hand side of the Spoon corner, but Pound looking like he's going quicker this time.
Yeah, absolutely. He just lost a 10th coming around Spoon. In fact, he lost another 10th, but he's still 1/10 quicker. And with times as close as they are at the top of the board, every 10th is going to count. He's managed just to carry a little bit more speed through 130R. He's now back to that 2/10 up, and it'll just down to his final chicane, just to see if he can cut it as much as he can without going over the track limits to gain that bit of extra time. Get some good throttle application as he exits onto the start-finish straight. Now currently 2/10 up, so if this lap's clean, he's definitely going to improve. He's possibly going to be very close to the 2:10s.
Luke Pound then crosses the line, and he does improve ever so slightly. It didn't look like too much though. A couple of tenths in that one, Steve, as we see Vale hanging it out through the first part of the Spoon, and that's going to cost him all of that time and then some. I think he's going to abort this one. Just manages to get the 718 Cayman under control on the exit of one of the trickier corners on the track, but that's where you can lose all that time, Steve, and sometimes it's more of a mental battle than a battle. You see yourself up on the delta, and then it's all about trying not to concentrate on it as you finish your lap.
Yeah, absolutely. And what is interesting now with the GT4s, as we drop into 8 minutes remaining, you see people like Vale there made that mistake, and he was currently 3/10 up, so he knows that he's got a faster lap in the car. But he dirted the lap quite obviously there coming through Spoon, I think, and that's why he aborted. But instead of returning to the pits, he's staying out because he's got everything at optimum. There isn't enough time really to go back to the pits, do your out lap and do a couple of laps to get everything up to temperature. Literally now you've just got to suck it up, stay out there and just go for that next flying lap if you've got the fuel to do it.
So Luke Pound then, provisional pole with 7.5 minutes remaining on the clock. It looks like he's headed to pit lane. That might be the best we get from him this evening. Then it's Danny de Swart behind, only 2.5 tenths drift from pole position. Hutman, Valenduk, Malott, Kroll, Vale, Natafas and Lerman, and then Brendel round out your top 10. But a few of these guys in the pit either preparing themselves for another go, but as we've mentioned, you do need a couple of laps to get the pressures up in the car and really get the machine underneath you bouncing in the right direction before you go for your flyer.
Yeah, absolutely. But these guys know how to do it. They're doing a good job. We've seen Vale still 2/10 up at the moment. Lerman's in 9th, he's a 10th up as well. So there's improvement throughout the field. Dennis Workman, he's half a second up in 12th at the moment. So that could see him, if he can maintain that time, that could see him get well inside the top 10 if he can maintain that. there is Dennis Workman now as he's just coming round. He's got 4 tenths in the bank as he comes through the final chicane. This is very important now. Get the exit, get the throttle applied, maximum drive, maximum speed for the start finish now. Take the shortest line possible without putting undue pressure on the front end. See what he can do now. 4 tenths up. This is going to promote him possibly inside the top 10. There we go, 7th.
Jumps up to 7th place, and that could make all the difference, starting just that further bit up the grid with a tricky opening sequence of corners here at Suzuka when the pack's all bunched together. But Arjun Lohmann's here in the 46 Camaro, looking pretty stable and in control.
4 tenths up, 4
tenths up. So this is going to see him definitely move forward. Could see him jump all the way up to 6th place onto the 3rd row of the grid if he can keep it together through this final section. The Camaro pretty healthy in a straight line, climbing up over the crest into 130R. You'll see the nose dip as he touches the brakes slightly, ever so slightly. He seems to have taken a lot of apex speed, used all the track on the exit, and on the run up towards the Casio triangle, drops the anchor, manages to get the GT4 Camaro slowed down over the curb on the right and then over the left. And then it's really about pushing that pedal down as hard as you possibly can and stay right if you want to shorten the line to the finish line. But here we go, Lohmann's then on the run down towards the timing beam, and as he breaks it, he improves indeed, but up to 7th place. Still looks like he maybe lost a little bit of time through that final section, but indeed a really nice improvement just as the 5 minutes on the clock remain.
Yeah, absolutely, and Vale's still coming round now. He's 2 tenths up. He's got a little bit more time to find, but he's just he's struggling. He keeps losing it. It's just maintaining, isn't it? We're all on the hunt all the time for that perfect lap, and it just always seems to be maybe just that corner out of reach, as it were. It's so frustrating. Get towards the end of the lap and you just lose it in the final chicane. Anthony de Horst he was 2 tenths up. Spoke too soon. He just lost that there. Maybe too much curb through the final chicane there. But he's going to improve if he can carry this. He's got a 10th in it, so he will improve. May take him up a place, but not quite sure. We'll have to see. Yeah, indeed, he's gone up to 12th place. So an improvement, albeit just 1 place, but it was only 1/10, and that just goes to show you how close the entire field is tonight.
Fantastic indeed to see. So 4 minutes remaining then. Drivers running out of time if they want to get back on track and set a new fastest lap. A few drivers then resorting to maybe stay in pit lane and accept that that's the best. Nicholas Bellot here in the number 4 rounding spoon, looking in control and looking like he's improving with 3¼ minutes to go.
Yeah, absolutely. 3/4 tenths up. He's just had maybe a little bit of a poor exit there. He's lost a couple of tenths now, and he's losing time now. He's down to just a 10th up, so he lost 3 tenths in just that exit. And I know we sort of talk about 3 tenths, and it's not really a lot of time, but on the racetrack, as you can see from the timing tower on the left, it means it's the difference between 3 or 4 positions sometimes, and even more. It's as he comes through the final chicane now, he's just literally hanging on to that a final 10th or 2 that he's gained. He's 2 tenths. If he can apply this throttle now, get the drive out of the final corner, he has done that, and he's had a good drive because he's 3 tenths up, so he's definitely going to improve here. This could jump him up to 4th place. There we go.
There we go. So Malott exchanges a 3rd row starting position for a 2nd row, jumping up to 4th place. And Xander Vale here looking like as well he's going quicker, and that could see him with the margins actually so close towards the bottom end of that top 10. We could see him indeed move up a few rows, Steve.
Yeah, he's carrying 4 tenths gained at the moment, so he could see him actually go as high as 5th place really with it if he can maintain this. I mean, he has actually just, as we're talking, it's just dicing between 3 and 4 tenths, so he's losing a little bit. We just see the BMW lose it in the background there, but he's 4 tenths now, so he needs a good drive out of the hairpin. As we were saying earlier, he needs to get that throttle applied and maximise the potential he's got to get that Porsche round towards Spoon and get through Spoon for the last part of the lap, still carrying 4 tenths into the good, so it's looking like a good lap from Vale.
Vale turns the 718 Cayman into the first part of the Spoon curve, runs over the curb on the outside there, but you're allowed to do that as long as he doesn't get too wide here on the exit as well. Just about manages to keep the thing between the white lines, so hopefully his lap time isn't invalidated on the run up towards 130R with 1 minute and 38 seconds remaining. We'll see if the Cayman driver can indeed improve. A little bit of understeer though creeps in through 130R.
Yeah.
And that is that the lap time
No,
invalidated,
no, no,
Steve?
he's still 2 tenths up, but he
Still
was
two
half a
tenths.
second up. It just goes to show that very slight lift just cost him 2-3 tenths. But having said that, he's gone through the final chicane there. He gained it back, but he's just lost it on the exit. He took too
Oh
much
dear.
curb, unsettled the car, and lost the drive.
We saw the rear almost overtaking the front on the exit of the Casio triangle there. So Vale unlikely to improve. We'll keep an eye on it though. No, he doesn't go any faster. So we cut back to Anthony to Horst here in the
Four
32, going
tenths.
quicker, 4 tenths. So he's jumped up to sixth and looking to improve even more so. And with a 4 tenth advantage on his best lap time, that would see him scheduled to slot in ahead of Michael Huttman
Six
in
tenths.
the 84 Camaro. So with 6 tenths still in, well, an improvement then through that middle sector, seeing him edging even closer to Luke Pound's provisional pole position with under 40 seconds to go in this qualifying session. He throws the thing over the curb on the first part of the Spoon curve, manages to get it slowed down and settled for the second, and on the run down the hill and climbing up towards 130R, he's looking in control and set to improve, Steve.
Yeah, still half a second up. He was up to 7 tenths at one point, but just lost a couple of tenths through the Spoon. Although to me, he did look very, very smooth. As it goes through 130R, that might just have invalidated the lap, which will be a shame if it has, because he's half a second up. He still looks like he's attacking now. In fact, he's bailed out there as he entered the chicane. That's a real shame from him, because he had one more corner to go and he was half a second up. So that would have been a massive, massive improvement. As you said, that would have potentially put him in third place, I think.
So unfortunate there for Ter Horst in the 32 Mercedes, unable to improve on that final time. Tim Kroll, one of our podium finishers from the first round at Brands Hatch, improves to go fifth place as the checkered flag falls on this half an hour qualifying session. A handful of drivers really still on a lap, one of them being Nicholas Malott here in the number 4 Cayman. But if we see him improve, Steve, he's got a half a second advantage, half a second margin to jump to get up to pole. Can we see him do it?
I don't think so. He's struggling. He's sort of going between a 0 and a tenth to the good. So he's on the limit. You know, he's pushing as hard as he can, but he's not green at the minute. He's literally pretty much as he was. He's going to equal his best time. So I don't think we're going to see an improvement. I mean, we're talking a few hundredths would see that improvement, but he's just not quite there yet. So we'll just stick with him until he goes over the line, because he still thinks he can do something. Cause he's still very much pushing through that final chicane. Just taking a bit of curb there, maybe a little bit slow on the exit, we'll see. Still showing that he's there or thereabouts with his time. It's going to be a very minor improvement. In fact, no, he's now a tenth down on his lap, and that's pretty much qualifying more or less over.
It looks like that. So there we go. There's your second qualifying session complete for the SRHI GT4 Season 2. A very close affair indeed. My timing screen's actually showing to Horst as pole position, but I'm pretty sure that's incorrect. I had it that Luke Pound claimed pole for the Suzuka race this evening, followed by Danny de Swart, podium finisher last time out of Brands Hatch, followed by Michael Huttman, Nicholas Malott, Tim Krul, Yannick Valenduk. A very fantastic effort from him to drag his BMW up to sixth place on the grid, considering he is carrying an injury of some sorts. Ter Horst then down in seventh, and it's Lermans, Berkman, and Vale rounding out your top 10. So as we move towards the race, Steve, drivers will now probably switch over to a different setup. The car is going to feel different that first warm-up lap. Obviously, you're parading rounds. You're not at racing speed. It's all about adaptability, if I can get my words out, when it comes to the race, because you've got to switch over from that mindset of extracting everything from the car over one lap to considering that you've got to keep the car on the grey stuff and go round for 60 minutes.
Yeah, and you've got to adapt to changing conditions as well, because with 31 cars I think there is this evening, things can change very, very quickly, and it's not always for the better, shall we say. So you've got to be able to think on your feet. You might have a strategy played out in your head to how you think it's going to go, but it may well not actually go as planned, and you've got to be able to adapt. You've got to be able to switch your plans around depending. You may get stuck behind somebody, you may get involved in an accident. There's so many ifs, buts, why, whens, and maybes that definitely it's you've got to be very, very careful.
And exactly, and we saw that last time out at Brands Hatch. Obviously, it was through a slight mistake that we saw Danny de Swart having to pit early on, but he managed to make it work, and he adapted to that situation where he realized, okay, oops, my bad, I'm going to have to pit within the first 10 minutes of the race. But he managed to turn that round. He kept the nose of his car clean and lapped consistently. And sometimes these races, Steve, can be more of a time trial against yourself, really, bettering. Well, obviously, you want to better those on track around you, but sometimes consistency, making sure you're getting the best out of your car lap on lap, not making mistakes, can actually see you jump positions when it rolls around to pit stop time.
Yeah, absolutely. You've just got to have confidence in what you're doing, have faith in your strategy when you're playing it out, and not worry too much about what's going on around you, not get involved in too much about what not trying to second guess what other drivers are doing. Drive to your strategy. If you have to adapt it, you have to adapt it, but don't try not to react too much to what you think other people are doing. React to what you need to do. That's the key, and remain confident, but above all else, remain consistent with your laps. Just every lap, try and hit those apexes, spot your braking markers, and really get on the transition from the brakes to the power as smoothly as you can.
As we saw last time out, Brands Hatch, some very tricky conditions, but the drivers managed to get on top of them very nicely indeed. We saw very minimal mistakes considering how competitive this field is, how hard these drivers are indeed pushing. So excited to see what we can have before us this evening on a dry Suzuka circuit. The drivers will now pull away from the grid, we hope, on their warm-up lap. Luke Pound's going to lead them away in the 166 Aston Martin. But really now, Steve, you're kind of starting to work out who's around you, who might be challenging you into the first few corners, and indeed what your game plan is. Sometimes, you want to think ahead. Do I try and get to the outside? Do I want to get to the inside for the first few corners? What's going to be the optimum strategy to get me around this first lap cleanly, but also see if I can gain a position, or for the likes of Luke Pound and Danny de Swart up front, can we gap the field anyway?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, you've got to really react in a sensible manner to what you think is best at the time, and not overreact to others, but just look at the relatives to people. If you think you're being held up by somebody, and as we said right at the top of the event, we said sometimes it's you've got to have a lot of time in hand to get past somebody. It's all right catching them, but getting past them can be a different kettle of fish. But to be fair, it might be that you're better off pitting early. It just depends where it's going to throw you back out into the field. It may throw you back out into a worse position. There are all these things that you've got to look about. You've got to take into consideration your position at the moment, your pace you've got, who's around you, and where you might come back out if you did take that early pit stop, or if you fueled it. Do you fuel it with the option of thinking, instead of fueling it just for round about 30 minutes to do the pit stop, I'm actually going to put most of the fuel in and maybe run for 40, give myself the option to run for 45 minutes. Just give yourself a few options. Although it'll mean you're running heavy, it'll just mean you've got a few more strategy options in play.
So the drivers will need to have an awareness of what's going on around them, indeed around the entire circuit to some extent, to know if they're going to be able to pit and return to the track with a nice clear air around them. And for those of you playing along at home, on the timing tower on your left hand side next to the drivers' numbers, there's an orange bar which has the number 1 in. That shows that all the drivers, as it stands, need to make the mandatory pit stop across this 60-minute race, but that will go green if they have indeed made that stop, to be able to keep track of who's where, who's leading on the road, and who's made their mandatory visit to pit lane already. So Danny de Swart here in the 57 Mercedes, rounding the Spoon curve. He'll line up alongside Luke Pound on the front row of the grid. Michael Huttman then behind with Nicholas Malott. Tim Krull, who we saw get a pretty feisty start as the green flag waved at Brands Hatch last time out, alongside Valenduk, Ter Horst, Lermans, Workman, Vale, Natafas, Brendel, Lurtman, Delors, Dieters, Vitter, Schenk, Anderson, Bervat, Kessels, Arvidsson, Williams, and Patrick Tractor rounds out your top 23 positions. So as the drivers now weaving from left to right to try and get some temperature into the tyres. Some drivers opting not to engage in any sort of direction change, maybe correcting some settings, making sure they've got everything around them that they need. Maybe they've got a glass of water to their side just to make sure they're amply hydrated and fully focused on the race ahead. But as the grid forms up, the drivers will go through the Casio triangle for one final time under slow speeds before the race gets underway. Danny de Swart then alongside Luke Pound taking pole position in the 166 Aston Martin will be looking to get a jump on the field as they come round the final right-hander. Descending onto the long start-finish straight here at Suzuka. Get strapped in, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We're going to go racing in a few moments' time. The grid then onto the start-finish straight, filing down towards the timing line where we will get the green flag ever so shortly. Luke Pound will be looking to get a good start and lead the field for this first lap. Down in towards the tricky turn 1, turn 2, and then the iconic S's at Suzuka. As we go green, and de Swart looks like he's got a fantastic start, the Mercedes driver jumping our pole sitter on the run down towards turn 1. Then it's Hutman in behind, forced to bail out and think the better of it. Pound trying to hold the inside line and does so indeed. He's able to retain the lead and force de Swart back into second place. Then behind, Hutman leads Malott, Kroll and Valenduk. The first time into the S's, the drivers will swoop left and then right, and the driver's going to have to file down to single file very quickly here. There's not many lines to pick from an exploit, and as we can see, a very nice start there from Luke Pound, but he did have to wrestle the lead back from de Swart on the run into turn 1.
Yeah, absolutely, and looking like everybody pretty much got a clean getaway from what we could see there. Some great driving from everyone, as it's not very easy. You know, when you come in down into these first few corners, everyone's got to file into some sort of order and sort of, you know, not get too overexcited by what's going on in front of them, and just fall into line and get into the all-important rhythm. Don't try and win the race in the first few corners, as we've just seen Tim Kroll there and in round about 7th place, just defending from to Horst as we go around the hairpin for the first time. But it's looking like Luke Pound's just maybe, I won't say stretching away, but he's certainly got some daylight there.
Luke Pound then able to draw breath as he heads up towards the spoon curve for the first time with de Swart in behind. It looked like Hutman and Malott were getting together to some extent through the hairpin. They're followed in close company by Valenduk, Tim Kroll and Anthony ter Horst in the number 32 Mercedes as they descend and then climb again on the run towards 130R. This is really the run towards one of the only overtaking opportunities around this Suzuka circuit, as we see Valenduk and Kroll going side by side, running into the fast left-hander. Let's see if they file down. They do. Valenduk holding on to the position for the time being. And after one lap, Steve, it seems like everyone's been pretty well behaved and settling down into that all-important rhythm like you mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely, and when you look down that timing tower, the relatives, there's nobody there with a second in between anybody. They're all literally tenths apart, as we can see in the back there, filing through onto the start-finish straight. Slipstreams are plenty, just trying to gain the advantage, go defensive, as we see Valenduk just defending there, but that can cost him on the cutback at the second part of this corner, but he's managed to pull the BMW in tight and defend from Kroll. That's good driving from Valenduk.
And it looks like up at the front of the field, it looks like that Danny de Swart might have been able to get past Luke Pound. Indeed, he has. So he's taken the lead, wrestled it away from the 166 Aston Martin driver on the run down towards turn 1. Pound now needs to get his focus realigned and get set with his crosshairs on the back of that Mercedes in front, because behind is the Camaro of Michael Hutman, who will be looking for a way past any time soon. So a change for the lead on lap 2 as this quartet of Pound, de Swart, Hutman and Malott look to maybe gap the rest of the field and start settling the dispute for the podium between them. Behind then Valenduk, Tim Kroll and Anthony ter Horst, Lermans, Vale and Brendel round out your top 10 as they run up towards the hairpin. Hutman having to maybe just consider that Porsche behind is a lot closer than maybe he'd like. Malott looking to the inside, running through the right sweeping hander 200R towards the spoon. They're going to be side by side as they climb the slight gradient into this one, but I think Hutman should be able to hold it on the inside, but brave from a lot to look round the outside. Very nice indeed, good racing and good space left between them. No incident coming from this one just yet, as Hutman able to hold on to third place as it stands. That side by side moment has just allowed Luke Pound and De Swart to scamper up the road a little bit further. Malott tucks into the slipstream behind, looks one way and then the other. Hutman defending to the left-hand side as they run into 130R. That's now Valenduk indeed, and Kroll and Horst all close up, but Hutman runs slightly wide on the exit. Malott braking late in an attempt to go round the outside into the Casio triangle. We've seen plenty of drama through here over the years. Now, this battle looks to heat up down the start-finish straight. Malott able to tuck into the slipstream behind that Camaro, which certainly punches a very large hole in the air, and actually looks to the inside, separates the Camaro in the pit wall on the run down into turn one. It looks like Malott should have this one done if he can brake later than Hutman on the outside. They run side by side into two, but Malott runs the Camaro slightly out of road, drifts through to the middle of the track, able to close the door as they run up towards the S's. But fantastic racing early on, Steve.
Yeah, great respect shown, and just left that little bit of room there for Malott to get through, and he didn't need asking twice, did he? But very much Valenduk and Kroll are just there waiting for an opportunity, and to Horst as well. To be fair to him, he's hanging on to the back in the Mercedes as well. So this battle here, as we're just seeing them go side by side now, just where you shouldn't really be going side by side, I don't think.
Difficult to then file down into the Degners, but Hutman able to hold his line. Valenduk forced to run slightly wide over the curb. That nearly allows an opportunity for Kroll in the Porsche to get through. Kroll actually getting a bit squirrely on the exit. That's allowing to Horst to run side by side up towards the hairpin. But Kroll should be able to hold his line into the tight corner and keep that position. But wouldn't be surprised now to see Lermans in the Camaro challenging. It seems, though, like we've got this train forming, Steve, and sometimes getting out of shape and getting out of line, you can almost be past, like you're being pushed up into the grey stuff around a NASCAR track, an oval. You get out of line and the train comes steaming on through.
Yeah, but just look at the gap that's allowed De Swart and Pound to actually break away and be sensible. They're not close enough really to be battling. Pound's just hanging onto the back of the Merc, staying in touch with him. But because they're not battling, that's allowed them now to get nearly 3 seconds up the road. Really good, sensible driving from those guys. But Malott is looking to potentially make a break as well, and he's going to be hoping to maybe close that gap down, as he's now made a break from the guys behind him as well.
So as we see Valenduk and Hutman struggling to settle the dispute of who's going to have fourth place, Hutman round the outside of the Casio triangle, unable maybe to get the run out of there in comparison to the BMW, who sneaks up the inside, a little bit of a tap on the way through as they head down the start-finish straight. The Camaro will tuck in behind the Beamer. They're both running off the racing line, trying to judge who's going to go where and who's going to make the first move. But Valenduk holds the racing lines. They're 3 wide nearly into turn 1, and that's Kroll making a move on Hutman. There's Vale, I think, off it just behind, able to rejoin safely. Oh, as it looks like there was a collision. That was Hutman in the Camaro spinning off towards the left-hand side and collecting one of the Caymans. Here he is now down into 12th place. That looked like a few many cars into one's just not going to go, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's always a danger. Like we said, we're just running side by side through some corners that potentially maybe you shouldn't be doing, but generally the lads are sorting things out. The guys and girls are all sorting it out and getting through there and filing back, but sometimes, as you said, it's very difficult to file back in and find somewhere to slot in. When you're running as close as these guys are, quite often one person will find a way through and it opens the door for the next man, and before you know it, you found somebody else is on that piece of tarmac that you wanted, and 2 into 1 just doesn't go. Usually ends up with somebody on the AstroTurf or even worse into the gravel.
So here we have Andre Brendel in the 331 Camaro having to go to the inside either to try and distract Delors in front in the 49 Cayman, or indeed defend from Berkman behind this train of cars. Now the positions probably from around, I think that's Lermans up ahead in the Camaro, from 6th down to about 13th to Horst, who was up towards the front early on. You've got a gaggle of cars all really separated by a few tenths in between them. That's some really close racing, and nice to see early on. Not too many incidents around the Suzuka circuit, but drivers will be turning their minds now to start figuring out what the race is going to hold for them. They're in their positions to some extent now. It's all about focusing on where now is the time to make the pit stop the optimal strategy, make it work, as Arjen van der Lindel in the 61 Aston Martin climbs the hill towards 130R. But you've got to have your wits about you, Steve, looking forwards, looking back, but also looking ahead to when you're going to make your pit stop and where that might bring you out.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's at the moment, you know, for Valanduk, it's all about soaking up the pressure that Kroll's putting him under, driving his lines, and he possibly won't be worrying too much about his strategy at this moment. I would think with the clear air he's got in front, and potentially I don't think we've seen anybody really pick up any major damage, so everybody will really be playing the strategies as they planned them before the race started. He'll just be watching his mirrors when he has to and trying to soak up the pressure. Kroll will be equally thinking, I just need to keep putting the pressure on Valanduk. So I think we'll see a lot of the guys just sticking to the strategies, probably around about halfway through, doing the pit stops and you know, just doing exactly as they planned. They'll probably all be in their comfort zone as much as you can be in a GT4 race around Suzuka.
So despite Danny de Swart up at the top of the pile as it stands, extending a lead to nearly a second on the second and third laps, Luke Pound has set the fastest lap of the race so far. We're 10 minutes into this one and he's managed to close the gap back down to half a second. Here he is on screen with the Mercedes in front, very much in his crosshairs now, probably benefiting slightly from a slipstream of the car in front, enabling him to close up over these slightly longer flat out sections that are interspersed by these technical corners on the run up boon. He looks like he's maybe closing up a bit more, maybe has more pace in hand, but catching is one thing, Steve, as we so often say in racing, whether it's in the real world or here in the virtual world, but getting past is another.
Yeah, absolutely. We're only talking maybe a tenth or two quicker on the best laps, you know, so it's a case of just, as we said, apply the pressure. You know, we know best. We're commentators. It's just they just need to apply. They just need to apply that pressure. Drive cleanly. Drive as closely as you can behind him, and put the pressure. And for de Swart, it's all about trying to not get distracted by what's in his rearview mirror and just drive his lines. And I say it week in, week out, but it's a case of just drive your racing line. Try defend at the last minute if you have to. You know, they need to be really close before you start defending, because defending does cost you time in your laps. It's not the quickest line, so you need to be on your optimum line really and defend as a last resort.
So working together, maybe not getting engaged in battle, might help the two leaders get away as we cut back to Lermans and Alexandre Delors going side by side on the run into turn one. It looks like Delors got at the better of the Camaro and now through up into sixth place as they round the S's for the fifth time in this race so far. And contact between the two Camaros, wasn't too sure what happened there. It looked like that was Brendel maybe showing his nose on Lermans, and the two just got together and run wide.
Yeah, absolutely. That you know, it looked like Lermans just ran it a little bit wide, concentrating on the car in front, and Brendel maybe saw that little bit of an opportunity to run a bit more speed through, and he just tagged the back of Lermans there, and they both went into a little bit of a spin, unfortunately.
So that's very much unfortunate to see two drivers running inside the top 10 and looking to make moves further forward. Brendel's gathered himself together though, returns to the track ahead of Patrick Tractor in the 313 Ginetta. He's behind Michael Dieters in the Aston Martin, but it's quite difficult sometimes to get your head back down, especially if you've been involved in an incident. And sometimes if it's you're the protagonist, the antagonist I should say, you're the one making the mistake, it's sometimes difficult to get your head back down and gather your focus. But Anthony Terhorst here in the 32, coming under fire from Hutman, who was involved in that slight incident with Vale at turn one a few laps ago. Actually looking at my timing screen as Terhorst runs slightly wide over the curb, looks like Vale has taken his pit stop. But as we saw last time, Steve, pit stop this early on isn't going to damage your chances. We could see Vale in clean air lapping well. He could see himself leapfrog back into the top 10 once the stops take place.
Yeah, absolutely, very much so. And it's like we said, it's about keeping an open mind about what your strategy is and reacting to what you think is best in the moment. And you know, if you have to do a pit stop early doors because you may be stuck in traffic, you're stuck in a battle, it might be worth doing it. I think the thing to say though is that the higher up the field you are, then the less advantageous that would be, because it's going to throw you back into traffic further back, and you're not going to get that clean run. And you really do need the clean run to sort of take advantage and make the undercut, as it were.
So here we have the two Aston Martins going side by side into turn one. That's Vavat and Dieters, and they make contact on the run through a slight hip check. Now they're going to have to be careful rejoining not to collect the Camaro of Brendel, who was off on the previous lap. Again, just a side-by-side collision, sending one or both drivers off in this case, but able to utilize the runoff at turn one and rejoin safely. But this gap at the front between De Swart and Pound has not changed much. It's still hovering around the half-second mark, but they have managed to really start stretching their legs and get ahead of Nicolas Malott in the number 4. Now over 5.5 seconds the advantage between Pound in the Aston Martin and Malott in the Porsche, and that's really going to start playing to their advantage if they can continue this strong pace they're showing. In fact, half a second, or best part of half a second faster than the Cayman driver in third on that last time round. If they can keep that pace up, we could see this gap extend, and almost you kind of start picking your fighter, Steve. You select, okay, this is the guy I'm going to need to beat this race. Let's fight it out between us.
Yeah, absolutely, and that brings the strategy into play again, where Luke Pounder may think he's in the box seat for thinking, you know what, I'm going to pit that little bit earlier. Not quite yet. I would imagine it'd be another 10 minutes or so before he even starts thinking about it. But it would be advantageous for him to try the undercut, and that would really put the pressure on De Swart then to try and keep banging those lap times in, or react and pit early as well to try and limit the undercut. But depends how fast they catch up to any back markers as well, because obviously you wouldn't really expect it in the next 10 minutes or so, but you don't know what problems other guys further down the field have had, and maybe there will be some issues with back markers early on.
As we see Van der Linden here going side by side with Lermans, who was running inside the top 10, now scrapping over 19th and 20th place on the run into the Casio Triangle. It looks like Van der Linden decides that discretion is the better part of valour and backs out of that one, allowing the Camaro through. But here's Lotterman in the BMW in the 26. He's fighting hard with Hutman as they run into turn one, and he looks pretty comfortable at the moment.
Incident ahead.
Slight contact between the two drivers in front. That was Terhorst and Atafas, and Terhorst going off to exiting drivers right there on the run between turn two and the start of the S's, and he's yet to rejoin the track. So I wonder if he's got any significant damage from that collision. But he's going to have to limp a long way round to get back to pit lane to serve any time in the stop and indeed fix any of that damage. But that's another position gained. Lotterman and out to 8th position. And indeed, Hutman, who's trying to fight back through the order after that incident early on, that's another easy picking for him as they come through the Degner corners. And indeed, Lotterman running slightly wide, dipping 2 tyres over onto the gravel trap on the short chute between the two Degners. That's allowed Hutman to cut back to the inside, which is going to become the outside for the hairpin. Difficult to make it stick round here. Lotterman dipping a wheel in the grass. That's going to make his braking zone difficult, and indeed it has. He runs on. That allows Hutman up the inside. But it's such a strange corner, that hairpin. Sometimes running wide, you can get the power down pretty early and get off the exit nice and cleanly like Lotterman has done there, and he's managed to defend the position.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, it's just you look like you've almost gone too deep, but then you're applying the throttle from further back, and it gives you a little bit of a run on somebody who's maybe held that tighter line, and that's exactly what we saw there. It's not the quickest way, but neither is the tightest line either, so it literally equaled itself out there, and no advantage gained, and the battle goes on. And boy, are these two battling pretty hard. They are very, very close throughout the field, but we've got Patrick Tractor as well in the Ginetta side by side now as they enter the 130R, and he's got the advantage there, and job done P13 for Patrick Tractor.
Fantastic move round the outside of Dieters in the Aston Martin there. He would have had to have held on for that one as he runs over the curbs through the Casio Triangle. Meanwhile, at the front, Danny De Swart sets the fastest lap of the race so far. Actually, that was on the previous lap, but he's extended his gap now over Luke Pound to over 1 second, so it's nearly 1.5 seconds. The gap that was coming down at one point now looks to have been extended as we see Malott running in close company with Valenduc behind in the 301 BMW. We know that Yannick is carrying a slight injury, so this is indeed a fantastic battle for him to see him up in 4th place, but really just maybe now trying to get the trying to suss out where Malott's quick, where he might be losing time. We know the BMW's pretty decent in a straight line with the power that it has, but he's got to start looking for a way past, as Denise Pope here in 23rd, having a nice battle with Willems and Kessels. These guys fighting it out in the AM class. Obviously, the field's set into 2 different categories, which is nice to see, Steve, because you don't have to be fighting up at the front to still be fighting for a championship.
No, Malot's coming under a lot of pressure now from Valenduc. I just saw the relative dipping down there to 3/10, and indeed, Valenduc running really wide there and carrying a lot of speed, managing to keep it on the black stuff and tuck all in, no harm, no foul. He's there, and he's actually gained a little bit of time, maybe, as he's round about not even 3/10 now. He's closing up all the time on the back of Malot, so he's really applying the pressure. And that Cayman GT4, it's not bad in a straight line, but the BMW is a bit of a powerhouse, as we see him closing up in the slipstream as well through 130R. Still a bit of daylight between them, so no pressure this time. I don't think we're going to have any pressure into the braking zone for the chicane, and it's just going to be Malot's going to be looking for a smooth run through the curbs there and just get the power down and try and get the jump on the exit to try and avoid that slipstream down the start-finish straight.
It looks like he just about managed to do that because the gap extends ever so slightly, but wouldn't be surprised to see Valenduc close up as they run down towards turn 1. Tim Krul and the white Cayman behind is certainly coming with them, so we might see this duo become a trio shortly, with 39, just under 40 minutes now remaining in the race so far, 1/3 complete. But Malot running slightly wide on the exit, kicking up some grass and dust. You won't want to do that too often. Sometimes it does seem to bite and can send you spinning off in the other direction. But this gap here, these guys now are going to maybe start thinking with halfway coming ever so closer, Steve. They might start thinking, okay, now is the time to pit, as we see Valenduc getting slightly slidey on the way out of Dunlop. Maybe now's the time to just get the jump on someone, maybe head for pit lane slightly sooner. Or you might start thinking, okay, I'm in a good spot here, my rhythm's okay, I'm feeling on top of things. I'm going to keep running as long as I can and delay that stop right towards the final 15 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, if you think you've got good pace in the car, and there's no need, you know, not to think that. We don't really see the tyres dropping off in the GT4s for a long way. You know, I don't think they'll drop off too much before 50 minutes, or even maybe, you know, that you won't notice that much of a performance difference over the 60 minutes. It's just a case of it's a mandatory stop for tyres in this championship rather than a necessity. But yeah, it's still a strategy, because we all know how much time can be gained and lost with the pit stops. You've got to hit those pit boxes exactly right. You don't want to get caught speeding in the pit lanes. We see Valenduc really take an aggressive line there through Spoon and onto the long straight now, heading up to the 130R. He really tried to get the jump there and get into that slipstream, but he's going to be a brave man that tries to go down the inside, and he's nowhere near close enough. Again, I think Malot's got this one covered, as they both run way out wide there over the curb and onto the AstroTurf, into the braking zone of the chicane now. Again, smoothly over the curbs, trying not to unsettle the car too much, just allowing you to get that right foot planted, throttle fully applied, and again, Malot's done the job to break that slipstream, or just to get that gap big enough that Valenduc's not going to close up to him before they enter turn 1.
So Malot looking like he has the advantage at the moment over Valenduc behind. And as you were saying, Steve, about making sure you optimise your pit, unfortunately, it looks like Xander Vale in the 718 Cayman suffered he had a drive-through penalty, so potentially he was speeding in pit lane. So that strategic question mark we had over how far up the field could he get now looks like it's been answered, and we won't see that Porsche climbing too much further up the order. 2 laps now down on the lead.
No, absolutely, and look at Tahorst now all the way down in 20th place. What a nightmare this gentleman's having this evening after such a promising qualifying and a promising start to the race. He just seems to he can't seem to do anything right. Battling hard, trying to come back through the field. Credit to him, he's giving it 110% as he's really going for it now and trying to apply as much pressure as he can, but and getting up close and personal with that Aston Martin in front, but it's just maybe not quite enough pressure at the moment, and maybe it's going to be, even at 36 minutes left to go, it's really pretty much a recovery job now for Tahorst.
Tahorst, who started the race in 7th place, now fighting, and indeed he's got another position there, so up to P19 as he makes his way past the Aston Martin of Van der Linden, who ran wide on the exit of the S's up through the Dunlop curve. But now they come through Degner, and indeed just through those 2 corners he managed to close up massively on Lermans, another driver who we saw fighting inside the top 10 early on. Indeed, these 2 were together on the grid in 7th and 8th, so they've really fallen a long way from where they started. 36 minutes remaining on the clock. We're seeing a couple of drivers serving their mandatory stop. Denise Pope in the 79 Wild Things, Janetta taking her mandatory visit to pit lane. But this quartet here, actually rather an extended quintet with the car in front. But actually now we cut back to the front. Fantastic camera work here from Steve proudly as we return to this battle between Malott and Valenduk for the final position on the podium. Valenduk looking like he's challenging, but Malott seemingly has the advantage in all the right places to keep that BMW behind.
Absolutely, yeah. Malott is just doing exactly, it's textbook. He's driving his lines, he's trying to keep it smooth over the curbs, he's using as much of the track as he can without risking unsettling that Porsche, and he's getting the drive out of the corners, he's getting the jump on Valenduk. Valenduk, I feel, probably has the faster lap times underneath him, but he can't get in front, he can't take advantage of the extra pace he's got, and when it really counts in those big power zones where the BMW potentially has the edge over the Porsche, he's not able to get close enough on through the corner and into the exit.
So then the question becomes then, how is Valenduk going to get past? Is it just going to be he needs to line up an exit from one of those more technical sections? Does he need to start thinking maybe 2 or 3 corners ahead to see where he's going to make a move?
Absolutely.
How do you go about this one, Steve?
Absolutely, he needs to get a good exit out of the hairpin, which they're now approaching now. Get a good exit out there so he can apply pressure all the way through the spoon, and then it's the exit of the spoon is his best opportunity to try and really put pressure on Malott as they approach the 130R. If he's not close enough through the 130R to apply the pressure, he really needs to hang on to the back end of that Porsche and follow him as tight as he can through the chicane, and that's where he's struggling. But he needed to be, he needs to set it up out of the hairpin, he needs to be literally on the back of that Porsche now, and then through spoon really put the pressure on. As we said, it's about creating the opportunities, it's about forcing those errors and making Malott look in his mirror more than he's looking ahead. At the moment, Malott is in control here, he's doing what he needs to do, and although he's under pressure, he's soaking it up. Look at the gap he's got now. Every time at the crucial point, he's got a few car lengths that just give him that breathing space, and he doesn't have to do anything other than take the correct racing line and maximise the performance of the Porsche.
Tactical driving then from the number 4 Malott, able to stay ahead of Valenduk for this final podium position as it stands, with 3.5 minutes over the halfway mark this evening. Things looking pretty stable down the rest of the order. A couple of other drivers, it looks like Lotterman I can see tumbling down the timing tower. I wonder what's happened to him. Patrick Tractor here, 12th place. He's knocking on the door of the top 10. He's got a 1.3 second deficit to overturn to Alexander Witter in the 77 Maserati in front, but behind it's Dieters in the Aston Martin, and I'm pretty sure Tractor will know he's there, a bright yellow greeny colour behind. That's going to be looming large in his mirrors.
Yeah, absolutely, and we've not really mentioned the Maserati this evening, have we, too much? We made a big deal of it at the last round when it was raining, because there's no traction control, no ABS with this car. It really is raw horsepower and feel of the throttle and steering inputs with it. It's as we just see it wiggling there a little bit as if to prove a point. But I've not driven this car myself around Suzuka, but I have heard it's not a bad track for this car. It does suit the Maserati as much as it can do. Again, you've still not got that traction control, you've not got the ABS. It's very much a driver's car, and you've really got to be comfortable with driving it and really be able to get the feel for it, because everything is coming through your hands in the sim, as it were. You've really got to get that feedback through the wheel correct, so that you know what the car's doing and when to apply that power. But Whitty doing a really good job, and a very solid 11th place. We just see the back end lighting up there as he's exiting the corner, just putting down as much power as he dare, and he'll be now thinking about this braking zone, not braking too hard, just correct, hits the apex, and he'll want to get on the power, and I expect to see the back end light up a little bit maybe as he comes out of there. But no, smooth throttle application from Whitty there in the Maserati, and he's really showing us, to be fair, 11th place in that car in a field of this strength. That's a good showing.
Fantastic drive so far indeed. You talk about the car being a driver's car, and it's a driver's circuit here at Suzuka, so it's a nice combination indeed. But here we have Anderson in the 101. Janetta looking like he's coming under fire from Brendel behind. Brendel involved in an incident earlier on, has dropped down the order ever so slightly and looking to fight his way back through the positions as it stands. The Janetta weaving slightly, almost to break the slipstream. As we see, Vandendyk actually hits pit lane, Steve. So the question over who's going to get that final podium position, we might have to keep an eye on where the 301 BMW returns to the track. That's going to free up Tim Krul and indeed allow Malott maybe to focus on his times even more so. But pit stops are going to start coming in as we're 50 seconds away from the halfway mark. And it's going to be important to see where Vandendyk emerges. It could have been, did he jump too soon or was that the right time?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, he thought it was the right time. As I was saying in the commentaries, we were just seeing Anderson running really, really wide there in the Ginetta. He is the highest placed Ginetta at the moment, and he's just lost, he's defended it. Great driving from the camera angle. It looked like he'd lost that position, but no, he ran out wide. He got the drive, and he's got that position back. He's doing really well in that Ginetta on this circuit because, as I said during qualifying, I don't think this track really, really suits the Ginetta. I think the lack of top speed really hurts it. It can hold its own now, but Anderson doing a really, really good job. He's soaking up a lot of pressure from that car behind at the moment from Brendel.
Camaro then looking to the outside. That's Brendel behind, looking for a way past into Degner. Anderson able to hold the position. Oh, and he runs wide actually, skips through the gravel on the outside, and that's allowed the Camaro through. But ready to take advantage of that is the Maserati, who's now looking for a way past. That's Bitter in the 77, looking like he wants to make a move. That would be for 8th place on the road. Brendel's taken 8th place as Patrick Tractor running wide and Bitter getting the rear end out of that Maserati. We know that car's got no traction control. I reckon he'd be crossed up arms over arms in that one at that particular moment. But looking at the gaps around, things starting to open up in the lead. De Sport now with nearly a 3-second advantage over Luke Pound. Malott 7.6 seconds further down the road. Then he's got Tim Krul, we see, to Horst going side by side with Willens into T1. Really just a recovery drive from him now, but after that slightly earlier pit stop, he pitted with 32.5 minutes to go. He's ticked that box, so it's all about racing to the end. And Vandendyk, who's the driver furthest up the order to make his first stop in 301 BMW now, he's going to be concentrating on getting some good lap times in. He's in clear air, something he hasn't had for a little while, Steve, and this might make the difference as we see Berkman pitting from 7th place.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be. It's good for him that he is in clean air now because he's going to be able to maximise his lap times. And when Malott is now in the pits, when Malott comes round, it'll be interesting to see where Vandendyk actually does. Whether he gets past him, and we saw Malott was still stationary there as Vanendyk's coming round towards the 130R, and he's going to have tried to really maximise. I think Malott really has responded. He's reacted to the pit stop of Vandendyk and thought he's going to try and minimise the undercut because he will have been aware that Vandendyk maybe had a few extra tenths a lap in him, and it was just the fact that Malott was doing such a good job of defending. So it's going to be very, very interesting now to see what Malott can do and whether he gets out in front of him.
Vandendyk then with tyres up to pressure. He's got the car underneath him as we see a couple of drivers emerging from pit lane. Vandendyk jumps up to 10th on the road, and it looks like Malott has indeed got out in front, and more crucially it looks like Tim Krul has managed to leap the BMW as well, so it goes from a difficult situation to an even tougher obstacle to climb now, because if Vandendyk really wants that podium position, he's got 2 Caymans to get past, and he seemed to struggle getting past Malott early on, and Krul looks to have pretty decent and competitive pace, so it's going to be a tough order now for Vandendyk to get past, but his opportunity might be now with Krul on fresh tyres, not up to pressure yet. Vandendyk already having completed a hot lap. Now's the time to pounce if he wants to make a move as they go through the Degner, and actually Krul runs slightly wide, maybe a bit of contact between the two of them. Can they get it sorted into the second Degner? Wow, Krul managed to get that one gathered up from underneath him and manages to retain the position, but it looked like a little bit of paint swapping there, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely, and all the time this is giving him a lot of the chance to really try and maximise that gap and keep his eyes forward, because these two are going to be dropping away from him. They're not driving the optimum line, they're causing each other to make mistakes, run wide, and even run off the track at one point there. But we're seeing Van der Linden with a stop-go 30. That must be for speeding in the pit lane. Unfortunately, he's either hit the limiter too late or released it too soon, one or the other, but he's been caught speeding in the pit lane, so that's another pit stop effectively to his lips. That's his race pretty much done. this evening.
So as the pit stops play out, then it's Andre Brendel who leads on the road from Patrick Tractor, because we've had our long-time race leader Luke Pound hit pit lane, as well as auto pitted a lap previously. So their battle for the lead will resume, but it will be, albeit for a couple of positions further down, as Patrick Tractor on your screen at the moment in the bright orange Ginetta tries to go a little bit longer on his fuel and tyres. But Pound returning to the racetrack. I wonder whether we'll see De Swart coming through, and it looks like De Swart might have already gone past. I'm just trying to see if the timing screens adjust, and there is Danny De Swart just disappeared out of shot, a couple of cars up the road in the black and yellow Mercedes. So it looks like Luke Pound might have not been able to jump the race leader before the pit stop window opened up.
No, absolutely. It looks like De Swart's got that position, and we'll just wait for the relatives on screen to refresh themselves, and that will confirm that De Swart is in front of Pound on the track. But the pit stops are all playing out now, and they're indeed De Swart in positions that is first and second relatively when all the pit stops play out. We've got Brendel, Tractor, and yeah, I'll let you say that name.
Eichlin Boom, I think, is what I've been going with. But anyway, in the 31, Mercedes is in third place on the road, but those top three drivers, all who have 3 and 1 in their number, I've noticed, still due to pit. So De Swart is probably our net leader, holding a healthy advantage over the rest of the field before the halfway mark, and it actually looks like he's extended the lead over Luke Pound. It's now around 6 seconds between the two of them. So pit stop strategy working out for the Mercedes driver, but here Valenduk unable to get past Tim Krul, and there's been a couple of laps now, so Krul likely to have that Cayman up to temp and working in an optimum window now. So really Valenduk might have missed his opportunity, and he's got to try something different because he couldn't get past Malott before, and the likelihood is Krul's going to be as tough an obstacle to pass.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Valenduk is going to be dreaming about Cayman GT4s and specifically the rear ends of them, because he tried to undercut Malott and get back out in front of him. That didn't work, and he swapped Malott for Krul, and albeit it's in a different livery in a different colour, but he's still staring at the back end of a Cayman GT4 and struggling to find the pace at the right parts of the lap to be close enough to take advantage of the BMW horsepower. He's just not close enough. Again, the Cayman seems to get out of the corners so much better than the Beamer, and he's really struggling.
So we see Eichlin Boom in the 31 Mercedes pitting from third place. He's going to tumble down the timing tower on the left-hand side. But it'll be interesting to see where he rejoins, as Krul and Valenduk separated by a handful of tenths. But really, Valenduk needs to start thinking ahead, because with 23 minutes to go, if he wants to get past Krul and maybe get onto the back of Malott, who he struggled to get past earlier, the time is ticking away. So the BMW driver, who we know is carrying a slight injury and has had clearance from his physio to race this evening, is certainly putting a stellar job in as it stands, as we move back down the order towards Alexander Delors in the 49 Cayman, and Workman behind another Cayman in the number 5. These two locked together at the moment. Hutman up the road a few seconds, 1.2 seconds up the road, as they're side by side through Dunlop. Very close indeed. That could have ended badly. It looks like Delors getting slightly wide through the Degners, and there's a Ginetta off in front of them, which almost distracts Delors there. So that's difficult, and that's going to allow Workman up the inside. So a change of position there. Delors distracted. I don't blame him really. The Ginetta off in front, kicking up the dust and the dust. That's going to be difficult when you're arriving at the Degner. A very tricky braking zone there, Steve. You're kind of turning and running over the curb on the inside. So easy to make a minor mistake that compounds itself. You find yourself running wide.
Yeah, absolutely. Degner too. It's one of those corners where you almost you want to turn in early, but if you turn in too early, it's you can really mess the exit up. But again, likewise, if you don't get turned in early enough, you do exactly that. You push on, you run too wide, and all of a sudden you're just looking at the corner going away from you out of your right-hand window, and there's not much you can do there apart from watch out for those guys that are coming through. I mean, thankfully they were just putting a lap on him, and he was getting the blue flag anyway, so he's out of the way, and these two are battle resumed. Although it is looking like potentially now the Workman is maybe stretching a bit of a gap, although he's run a bit deep into the chicane there, and that's allowing Delors to maybe crawl some of that time back. But I would say Workman's looking like he's potentially got the pace to extend the gap.
So with just under 21 minutes remaining, we see Patrick Tractor in the Ginetta, the 313, returning to the track after making his mandatory stop. Valenduc here though, he looks like he's managed to find a way past Krul, and he's flashing the lights. There's traffic in front, the Audi. He wants to get on with it, wants to try and extend this gap over Krul. I wonder how he got that one done, probably into T1. A likelihood, Steve, is that he got a nice clean exit from the chicane as that Audi runs wide and nearly closes the door on the BMW as it makes its way through. That maybe Valenduc has managed to work out how to get past one Cayman, and he's going to kick on and see if he can find, repeat the same trick and do Malott, something he was unable to do earlier on in the race.
Yeah, absolutely. 20 minutes to go. What's the gap? 3.6 up the road. So it's going to take some doing. I think he's got the pace to close the gap, but Malott knows how to defend. He knows how to drive the Cayman, and we didn't see any mistakes really, did we, when we were watching? And these two have had most of the airtime tonight. They have been the closest on track for the majority of it. Certainly Valenduc's been involved in most of the close battling. And like I say, I think he will probably close that gap down as long as he can drop Kroll and not have to defend to him. But Malott, I think he's going to be a little bit more of a tougher customer to overtake than Kroll was, maybe. No disrespect to Kroll, but Malott's already proved himself tonight, I think.
So with 19 minutes and 20 seconds remaining, Andre Brendel leads away, but he's still due to pit. Here's Anderson in the 101 Ginetta, with a Ginetta in front and an Aston Martin behind. I think that car is out of position because it's in fact Patrick Tractor. There we go, the orange Ginetta, a couple of cars up the road that he's battling with for position. So the blue flag should be waved for the 08 in front. Actually, no, sorry, I apologise. That's to Schenk. He's actually got through. So this is a battle for position. And there's a trio of Ginettas here fighting over the 11th, 12th and 13th places. So Patrick Tractor, actually, his strategy of staying out that little bit longer looks to have worked, and he's leapfrogged a couple of guys now. And the 1.3 seconds up the road is the Maserati of Witter, who's the next position. So this quintet here, Steve, although separated by a few tenths, look likely to be locked in battle for the remaining 18.5 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. And interesting battle with the Ginettas as well. Tractor taking the top honours out of the Ginettas at the moment. He's in that lead, the highest position Ginetta, albeit three of them battling very, very closely, almost within a second on lap on the track, as it were. So, but Tractor looks like he might be potentially starting to drop the two Ginettas behind him. But it's going to be an interesting battle, I think, that's going to rage on for the rest of the race with these guys in equal machinery. But they have got the Aston Martin behind of Dieters. He's the AM class, but he's going to be putting some pressure on the back of the number 8 Ginetta very, very soon. I think he's just playing a waiting brief at the moment while these Ginettas up ahead battle it out.
So meanwhile, as this all takes place, Luke Pound sets the fastest lap of the race. So he's certainly trying to get a shimmy shake on and catch up to De Swart in front. The gap now down to just under 5 seconds. And here we go on screen, Lotterman, who we've seen battling hard throughout this race, with an Aston Martin in front who goes slightly sideways through the first Degner and then must run on because Lotterman finds a way through. That's Vervet there. So indeed nearly contact with De Horst in the background, whose race seems to unravel over the 43 minutes so far. Valenduc running wide as we cut back to him through 130R, and then the last time by, Krul went faster in the middle sector. So an exciting battle here.
But look at the gap to Malott up ahead. It has come down by a second and a half almost, I would say. So they are gaining, and Valanduk is pulling Krull along behind with him, although the gap is just under, well, it's round about a second as they go over the start finish line, 1.3, but Valanduk is closing on Malott ahead, so he's definitely got the hammer down, and it's 16 minutes to go. He's definitely going to close that gap, but as we said, it's whether he's going to be able to find a way past.
So the gap reduced that time by, in fact, it was a rather healthy 4/10 that Valanduk managed to take out of the Porsche in front, at 2 minute 12.1 compared to Malott's 2 minute 12.5. So he clearly has the advantage in terms of pace as it stands, as we see Zerati, the number 77 of Witter, getting a drive-through penalty. That might be one too many ventures over the white line. That's a really unfortunate mistake there. So now with 15 minutes to go, he's going to tumble down the order when he serves that penalty, and likely to slip maybe outside the top 20. But Valanduk looking like he's closing in on Malott for 4th place on the road, but with Andre Brendel up top in the 331 Camaro still yet to pit. Likely this battle will become the scrap for the final position on the podium. But that BMW is definitely looking strong, Steve, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Valanduk closing up again at the end of this lap.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he really is pushing the Beamer, and he's got things on. He runs really wide there. I think that is an excursion, and the guys are going to have to start watching for track cuts, as Whitty has found out, as you pointed out there. He's got a drive-through which will be for track cuts, which just to for anyone who's watching, you are allowed to exceed track limits and gain an advantage 3 times. You get 3 warnings. On the 4th time, you do receive a drive-through, so you enter the pits and you do have to drive through on the limiter, so it is potentially very, very costly. Just a shout out for Benjamin Simmers in the chat. He's enjoying the stream, says it's really fun to watch, and compliments to you, Tim. Great commentary, because I know you're doing most of the talking while I'm flicking around with the cameras this evening, but really enjoying this race. It is a good battle to watch, Benjamin, and thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Benjamin, indeed. And if you fancy yourself getting involved in SRHI, you can indeed join their Discord and get involved with the racing action you're seeing on the screen in front. But thank you very much to those who are watching. Witter here in the 77 Maserati. He's unfortunately going to have to serve a drive-through, which is going to elevate Patrick Tractor into the top 10. So a really fantastic drive from the 313 Ginetta as the Maserati peels off into pit lane. He's going to have to slow, bring that car right down. Be careful, you don't want to get caught speeding in the pit lane. That would really compound the problem, having to serve a drive-through and then a stop-go for going a bit too quickly through the speed gun. But here we have Dieters and the Tapas behind in the Aston Martin as they run into turn 1. It's a fantastic camera shot. You get to see how these cars close up and then the gap extends as they stand on the gas, but credit to the Tafas, they're able to keep right up behind Dieters on the exit of turn 1 as they come through the S's. Single file through here, no real overtaking opportunities, so they're going to have to settle this one somewhere else on track.
The Maserati's not hit the. He's been speeding in the pit lane. He's now got a stop go 30. Sorry to interrupt there. Just heartbroken for anybody that suffers a drive-through and then to compound the problem gets a stop go 30 for speeding in the pit lane. So Mr. Whitty won't be a happy chappy. I think he may be parking that Maserati and putting the cover on it.
That was a case of commentator's curse. I think that might be my first, Steve, so I'll tick that one off the list. I did say that that would be the worst thing to happen, and unfortunately that has befallen Alexander Witter in the 77 Maserati, so you expect him to tumble down the order even further now. But Willens here in the 195 Cayman, locked in battle with Arvidsson in one of the Ginettas. These two are fighting it out in the AM class, although up the road there are a few more AM drives, so they're further down the order, as it looks like that was to Horst on the outside there, stopping and reporting back to pit lane. So indeed he's decided to that he's had enough this evening, and that's kind of understandable considering he started 7th and his race seemed to fall apart in that opening 15 minutes or so, Steve, as Brendel hits pit lane from the lead.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always it's difficult, and he battled on. He gave it a good show, but tonight wasn't his night at Suzuka, and understandably he's decided to park it. But Valanduk 1.1 back now from Malotti. He's really closing, and he's still got just under 12 minutes to go. There is no doubt within the next couple of laps he's certainly going to be putting the pressure on that Porsche Cayman GT4 of Malotti in front, and Malotti is going to be battle commence from pre-pit stops. Kroll is getting dropped a little bit. He's trying to hang on, but he's 1.3 back now, so I don't think he's going to really get too involved in the battle, because I think Malotti's got the pace over Kroll as well. So I think these two, as long as they don't start doing anything really silly, even if they start battling respectfully, I don't think Kroll's going to get brought into the battle with them. I think it's just going to be a two-car battle.
So Valanduk then will probably be taking forward the lessons learnt from the battle with Malott in the first half of this race. He's going to need to keep his head down and analyse where that Cayman's faster. He knows how he got past Kroll, so if he can do a repeat performance on Malott, he might be able to make a way through. But as you say, Steve, Malott certainly seemed to have the advantage over the BMW in that earlier scrap. But seconds out, round two, I'm sure these two are going to get to it fairly shortly, as indeed Valanduk closing up mightily through the spoon curve. And this is exactly what you said, Steve, that he needed to do. He's right tucked under the rear wing of that Cayman as they run up towards 130R.
Yeah, absolutely. This is definitely what he needed to do, and he needs to really just, as we see him now popping out of the slipstream, and he's going to brave it. He's going to go to the inside, but just show his nose, force Malotti a little bit wide. He needs to now concentrate on staying up behind, tucked up as much as he can, get into this braking zone, as he is doing indeed. But now he needs to keep it clean, tidy, smooth over those curbs, and he just see Malotti just eking out the slightest of advantages as they exit that chicane there, and I'm not quite sure if the beam was close enough. I don't think he is, but he's gaining, and he's gaining very slowly. But is he going to gain enough before the braking zone? I don't think so.
So run down towards T1. Valanduk looks to the inside, but hops on the brakes slightly earlier than Malott, who's able to sweep around as they go into turn two and maintain that position for now. But Valanduk, that was certainly his closest effort and best attempt so far at making this move for what is third place now, after Andre Brendel's made his stop, the final caller to pit lane. So now locked in battle, the final step on the podium with under 10 minutes to go. It's really now or never. Valanduk is going to have to start considering when he's going to make this move on Malott. He managed to get it done on Kroll, but every time he makes a half-hearted attempt, he can lose time. So he's got to then gather himself back together and make another assault on the Porsche in front. But Valanduk looking like he does have the pace at the moment, so needs to keep a level head and start setting up a move. But on the exit of the second Degner, he's closer than he has been before. So now he needs to start thinking a few corners advance, as actually he's going for it now, round the outside into the hairpin, the Cayman, the inside, able to just close the door on the exit. That's allowed Kroll to close up significantly and indeed compromised their exit. So Valanduk now is going to have to line up, try and see if he can get the better exit out of the spoon corner once again for that run up towards 130R and into the Casio triangle, maybe even further down towards T1. But as they come through the first left-hander, we ride on board with the 301 BMW.
Oh, understeer.
Both of them understeering significantly through the second part of the spoon curve onto this back straight. Malott moves over to the left-hand side, trying to break the slipstream ever so slightly as they climb up the hill towards one of the fastest corners on the track. It looks like Valanduk's not close enough as it stands. He really needs to get up behind this Cayman and nail the braking zone. But so often we've seen Malott able just to eke out an advantage in the braking zone here for the Casio triangle. But Malott's gone deep, and that's allowed Valanduk up alongside as they go through the second part. Malott had to close the door. The BMW was rather slowed down on the exit there. That's allowed Kroll into the mix. That was Valanduk's best attempt, but unfortunately was slowed up by the rejoining Cayman, and he might have a look down into T1. He's certainly got Malott rattled this time as we ride on board. He looks to the inside, unable to make the move again into the first corner. But really, Valanduk's pressure is starting to pay off, and an unforced error. And again, it looks like Malott running wide on the exit of turn two. allowing Valenduk to close up and bringing Tim Krul with him. But sometimes, Steve, it's not about making the pass, it's just about forcing the guy in front into an error.
Absolutely, mate. I don't want to talk. I just want to watch the battle. It's absolutely fantastic. And I was wrong. Krull is there. He's been brought into it, but I think that's because Valenduk this time in round 2, as we put it, is absolutely attacking. He knows time is against him now, and he needs to attack hard. I think very much in that first half of the race before the pit stops, maybe Valenduk was using his head and thinking, you know what, I'm just going to try apply the pressure, but I don't want to slow us up. I want us to get into the the pit window that he wanted to use, and that's what he did. But we're seeing him driving much more aggressively, albeit respectfully, but a lot more aggressively. He's attacking a lot harder. As we see now, he's literally glued to the bumper of that Cayman, and he's looking inside, outside, round the back, which way I can get. But he's getting, more importantly, he's getting into the slipstream of the Cayman, and I think if the clock doesn't run out on him, he's going to get that pass done. He really is fighting hard and pushing hard, and Malott is really, if he was sweating in the first half, he's going to be definitely sweating now, and his eyes are going to be transfixed on that mirror, and it is full now of BMW.
As they round the Spoon corner for the 23rd time then on the slight downhill, and then they climb back up again towards 130R. Malott moving over from the left to the right to try and break the slipstream. You know how powerful this BMW is and how quick it is in a straight line. But Valenduk choosing to run towards the inside there into 130R. That might be the mistake that's costing him that time towards the Casio triangle. Maybe if he just followed in behind, he might be able to stick with him. But as they come through the chicane to round off the 23rd lap, heading on to lap 24, Valenduk now, look at that time. Malott just able to extend the advantage in the crucial areas. Valenduk unable to put a move together. And Krull behind is looking like he wants to maybe make something happen if these two get together or there's any slowing up in front. But as it stands at the moment, De Swart leading the way comfortably. Actually, Valenduk makes a mistake there on the curb. Manages to gather that one together rather nicely, but that's going to cost him time. Krull looking like he wants a way past, and that might just allow Malott that breathing space he needs to defend that position, which is the final place on the podium.
Yeah, apologies to anybody else who happens to be racing around Suzuka this evening, because we can't get the cameras away from these guys, because this is the battle of the night. This has been raging from pretty much the first few laps. Malott and Valenduk have had the majority of the camera time because they've been doing the majority of the racing, respectfully to everybody else, but they are the closest guys on track and they are really pushing hard. As we say, Valenduk has come out the pits a new man, as it were, and he's pushing so much harder. But Krull, he's not far away. He's close enough to take advantage of anything that goes wrong up ahead, and he's been pretty sensible. He's not putting too much pressure on Valenduk. He's just sitting there. He's the third man in the train. He knows that it's all to win for him, and he's got the least to lose out of anybody. He can just sit there. He's sitting pretty in 5th place, and he's just waiting and waiting to see what transpires between these two, because as respectful as they all are, quite often these battles, as they end in the last few laps, they can end up with one or both of the cars running off wide and just opening the door for a couple of cars to get past. As we see Krull now really run wide there, coming out of the Spoon, absolutely tucked under the bumper of under the rear wing of the BMW. Not quite close enough to do anything, but he'll certainly be close enough. Maybe if he can get through 130R at an equal speed as they go into the braking zone for the chicane, he might be able to put some pressure on Valenduk, and he's certainly tucked up and he's certainly close, but I think he might just tuck in there and try and stay close for the start-finish straight.
A little over 3.5 minutes to go. It's going to be a handful of laps remaining here at the second round of the Sim Racing Hub International second season of GT4 action. The drivers who started 4th, 5th and 6th on the grid are now running 3rd, 4th and 5th, albeit Valenduk in front of Krull. They're having to deal with the traffic in front. That was a slower Cayman, and that might cost Valenduk some time. Blue flags waving, and indeed the Porsche rather chooses to exit stage left and get out of there, because you wouldn't want to be involved in this thing at the moment as the battle heats up with 3 minutes to go. Valenduk now has got to gather himself up, get his crosshairs locked on the back of that Porsche Cayman, which he spent the majority of tonight's 60-minute race looking at the back end of. He's going to have to really start thinking that if an opportunity presents itself, it's the one he's going to have to take with 2.5 minutes remaining on the clock.
Yeah, absolutely. It almost seems like Valenduk's lost a little bit of momentum at the moment, and he's struggling to close that gap back down. He keeps making a few little unforced errors, as we see there, just running that little bit too wide. That kick of dust, that's cost him a little bit of time. Malott is within striking distance. He is getting closer, but he's not catching him as fast as he was in the opening laps. But he's showing his nose. He's putting him under pressure as they enter the hairpin. He's going to be looking to get a good exit, but Krull just getting a little bit crossed up coming out. He's just lost a little bit of ground to Valenduk. But it's very much Malott's race position to lose at the moment. He's the man controlling this train, and he's done a great job of soaking up the pressure, and he's increased his pace ever so slightly now. He's pushing hard for these last 2 minutes to try and hang on to what is the final step on the podium.
So as Danny de Swart crosses the timing beam to start what could be the last lap of the race, Luke Pound actually has managed to close in behind. The gap which we saw was around 5 seconds at the midway point when these guys decided to hit pit lane for their mandatory visit to the stops. Actually, he's managed to close it down now, the 166 Aston Martin, just under 3 seconds back. Valenduk under pressure from Kroll, though. These three drivers really have been stealing the cameras for the majority of this race, and it's no surprise as to why. Valenduk under pressure from the Cayman behind. He did manage to get past, but you wonder, actually, Steve, whether Valenduk might be running slightly lower on fuel in an effort to pass Malott earlier. Did he make a slight adjustment to his pit stop, and now is having to pay for it with a little bit of lift and coast around these final laps?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Maybe that's the case. Just apologies to Divisa in the chat. He's saying, "Come on, Danny." I'm guessing that's De Swart maybe that you're cheering for. And as Tim just pointed out there, we've not given them much airtime, but Danny's just run away with it really up at the front, and he's pretty much been out on his own for the majority of this race. But we will cut back to him very, very soon as he's going to approach the checkered flag. I believe, with no mistakes, he will be taking the checkered flag of this round 2 GT4 championship with SRHI.
Valenduk then looking like he's just got the job done on Krull for now, and I say that despite only 30 seconds remaining. Anything can happen in those 30 seconds, but really his eyes are locked on the back of that black and red Cayman in front. But as we cut towards the leader, it's Danny de Swart who's leading the way and has done pretty comfortably with very little competition from Luke Pound. He's been able to keep the Aston Martin at arm's length for the majority of this race. You get the feeling that for this second half of tonight's 60-minute encounter, he was just lapping to a pace, remaining comfortable, minimising mistakes. And yes, despite that gap having come down the better part of 2, 3, maybe even 4 seconds, he's kept in the lead and looks best placed to take the checkered flag as he rounds 130R for the final time. The timer has hit 0 at the top of the screen, so this is the final lap and he will be taking the checkered flag. He comes through the Casio triangle for one last time, hits the accelerator as we ride on board with him as they run down through the final right-hand corner, passing the packed grandstands on the left, and he stays right. He's going to take the checkered flag. Danny de Swart wins the second round of the second season of SRHI's GT4 in comfortable style. And it looks like, Steve, Luke Pound has dropped back to pit lane, or dropped down the order anyway. So Nicholas Malott will take second place in the line. Yannick Valenduk, battling hard for what was going to be a podium position, has now turned into a podium position, with Krull in 4th place behind. So these drivers benefiting. And there is the Aston Martin, the 166. On the left-hand side on the run-up towards 130R. I wonder whether Pound's run out of fuel. It looks like it.
Does very much so look like it, and that's really, really unfortunate to be battling so hard for so long, and just literally at the 3 corners to go, 3-4 corners to go, and running out of fuel. Very, very unfortunate, and really, just one of those mishaps you don't want to happen, and always worth sticking a couple of extra litres of fuel in, I think, when you're doing your calculations. But unfortunate there for Pound, and he won't be enjoying watching all these cars go past him on the straight there.
Heartbreak for Luke Pound, and he did so well to claim pole position for tonight's race, and then to be battling for the lead with Danny de Swart and so set for second place. But as we cut to Manuel Willens here, looking on course to take 18th place. A fantastic race this evening. These guys, although further down the order, looks like they've been locked in battle for the majority of the event. But to run through the finishers as they take the checkered flag, it's Danny de Swart, who's won the second round of the second season ahead of Nicholas Malott and Yannick Valenduk rounding out the podium. Tim Krul in fourth ahead of Michael Huttman, who definitely achieved a recovery drive, Steve, after we saw him off earlier on in that minor collision. To fight back to fifth place is definitely a valiant effort indeed. Then sixth, Berkman ahead of Delors, Brendel in eighth, and Patrick Tractor in ninth position. So those two drivers who went slightly longer in their strategy certainly paid off for them, leapfrogging up into the top 10 with Schenk in 10th. Luke Pound dropping down the order. We'll see whether he gets classified as a finisher. Then Tafas in 11th ahead of Anderson, Dieters, Lotterman and Vervat, who did have a drive through. So it looks like Denise Pope might be promoted to a top 15 finish as the checkered flag waves. But Steve, a very exciting encounter again this evening. Nice to see a dry race, and we really got to see how strategy can pay dividends over the 60-minute race.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, I mean, we saw another Ginetta literally parking on the side of the straight near Luke Pound there on the last lap as well. So somebody else potentially running out of fuel. But absolutely fantastic race this evening as ever. As we just got some highlights to show you as we wait for some of the podium finishers to drop down, maybe for an interview. Just see a few of the incidents from the opening laps as we go. But absolutely fantastic start from most of the guys there, really filing 31, 32 cars it was through those first few corners with very, very few incidents, side-by-side action, very, very respectful, and some really good performances all round this evening, some very fantastic, some great driving, Valenduk, Malotti, Krull, not to mention, the guys up at the front, although they didn't get the camera time, that's because they were doing their job so efficiently, they were finding space, they were, getting themselves out of trouble. Luke Pound just, he lost it at the start a little bit, it was his start to lose, he lost the lead in the opening few corners and never really regained it back again, but he was set for a solid second place until obviously a miscalculation, I would say, on the fuel has cost him dearly this evening.
And as we saw on screen there, the two leaders cutting through on the lap 3. This is at the time they were joined together, by a shoestring almost in the opening few minutes, but they unfortunately were separated. Really, Danny de Swart looking like he was the man on a mission, able to gap the rest of the field. And an exciting battle though for the podium, and we've got to mention that it looked like there was good racing all round, Steve, and that's what these guys are showing up for. It doesn't matter if you're battling for wins for the top 10 or indeed down into the lower positions. Every battle is a battle worth enjoying and one worth winning.
Yeah, absolutely. You're battling for pride wherever you're fighting for, whether you are fighting for the lead or you're fighting for 20th place. You always want to finish one place higher than you are, so you will battle hard, and you don't want to let anyone past, and you'll fight as cleanly and as respectfully as you can. And this is the second round of the SRHI GT4 Championship, and it's been very, very clean racing so far. I mean, the last round was in those terrible torrential rain at really difficult conditions, but the quality of the driving is just second to none. They show each other so much respect. There's a little bit of door banging, bit of rubbings. We're just seeing a bit of an off there in the background. One of the Porsches well off the track there, but the majority of the racing is absolutely fantastic, and it's at a very, very high level, and it's I think anyone looking to join a community and get involved with some good clean racing, they wouldn't go far wrong by joining Sim Race Hub International.
For sure. So as we've had Brands Hatch, tick that one off the list. We've had Suzuka tonight. We're going to move on to Imola, I believe, is the next circuit. And that's a track that we have really seen GT racing take a hold of. Obviously, the former venue, the San Marino Grand Prix, now hosting Blancpain and GT4 events. Now, Steve, that's another circuit where you might have to force those unforced errors from the driver in front. We've seen that tonight, where actually if you keep probing at the car ahead, it might not be that you need to make a move, but rather force the mistake, as we see in Aston Martin proved my point by running wide into the hairpin. And that's sometimes the best way to gain a position, is to keep that pressure high and force the car ahead, like we say, into a mistake and open up that door for you to drive through. Imola is a circuit that lends itself to that kind of racing.
Yeah, absolutely. Imola's another one with track limits as well, where they're going to have to watch those for drive-throughs. It can get a little bit delicate, shall we say, a little bit dodgy, and the warnings can soon rack up. I'm just sort of thinking of the chicane in particular at the top end of the track there, where people do tend to try and gain a little bit of time. Some of the cars do ride the curbs better than others, but riding the curbs sometimes can lead to track cuts, and we know drive-throughs can literally, like we've said tonight, they can turn your race into a recovery job, and it's not always the best policy. It's more about consistency as it is at any track. But yeah, it'll be very, very interesting again at the next round, because it's a relatively quick track, although it's also very, very technical. So can't wait to see what's going to happen, and I'm really, really looking forward to it.
So, well, we have got one driver in the green room. I don't see why we shouldn't drag him in. It's the man we saw battling for so long throughout that 60-minute race, Yannick Valenduk, and we'll drag him in now and grab him for a quick word.
Okay.
So, Yannick, fantastic effort from you tonight. We saw that you were somewhat in a Porsche Cayman sandwich. You managed to get past Krull and really was stuck looking at the back end of Malott, as he had done for the majority of the race. Did you enjoy your race tonight, despite feeling like you maybe couldn't get past that Porsche in front?
Oh yeah, thank you guys. Oh yeah, I'm shattered. Yeah, it was a great battle with the three of us. I do think I was a bit quicker actually than Nicholas, but it's such a hard track to overtake, and especially because he had a very good exit out of the last chicane. So that was really the place where I was looking, but I just couldn't.
We saw.
I was really happy anyway. So.
Well, congratulations. And we saw that you decided to pit slightly earlier than your competition. Was that really an effort to get into some clear air, or what was the thinking behind your move there?
Well, I really felt stuck behind Nicholas there, and I thought I'd try another cut, because I thought maybe I can just get in front of him, and then I could probably drive away. But yeah, I didn't have a good pit stop. I fell off the thingies. I don't know. So it cost me about 5 seconds, and I actually came back behind Tim, which I was in front before. But so that was a bit of a shame. But well, I tried.
Oh, brilliant. Well, fantastic job this evening, and casting our minds forwards towards Imola. How are you feeling about that race? Because another track where it's difficult to overtake. Do you think strategy will play a part next time out?
Yeah, I think so actually. Track position will be very, very important. So I think I should focus on qualifying a bit more then as well. So because I was in P6 now, and my pace was definitely quicker than that in the end. So yeah, I will really focus on quali, and looking forward to it. Should be fun.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Yannick, for joining us in the commentary booth, and all the best for the next race.
Thank you guys. Thank you for having me.
Go even faster in qualifying, and at Imola, that 30-minute session might be very important for these drivers' races.
Yeah, absolutely. The qualifying, it might make the difference, and we know the first corner at Imola, it's for a first corner at any track, it's relatively fast left right there, and it's all about track position. The higher up the grid you can get, the less likely you are to be involved with any incidents that do occur going through that turn one. You're going to stay out of trouble effectively, or you're not going to have to slow unnecessarily because of cars, the concertina effect. So you do want to be as high up as possible. It goes without saying, and it'll be very, very interesting to see how qualifying pans out there, because there'll be a lot of guys there trying to at least get into the top 10. If not, really realistically, you want to be in the top 8, top 6 to ensure, when you've got a grid size of around about 30 plus cars, you do want to be in that top 10 for sure. I mean, definitely, I've experienced starting with my pace. I've experienced starting in the middle of the grid, around about 18th last time out there for me. And it's not so much incidents, but when you get all those, the 10, 15 cars in front of you or so slowing down, that concertina effect really, really hurts you, and you end up slowing, abnormally to far slower than normal race pace speed through there, and it does cost you time, and you get a few ambitious moves put on you, and if you're the cautious one trying to avoid those ambitious moves, you end up usually losing 2, 3, and even 4 places, as I'm sure you've seen yourself, Tim, when you're driving.
Yeah, of course, and it's when you get locked into that train, sometimes you've got to pull something out of the bag to make that position, and you can sometimes be left thinking, well, if I'd only just found 2 or 3 tenths in quali, I wouldn't be locked in this battle, and I'd be somewhere up the road fighting for a position further up the order. But Steve, I'm going to throw you into a slightly trickier one here and ask, if you had to pick a driver of the race, which performance particularly impressed you this evening, and why so?
It'd be hard pushed between Valenduk and Malotti, I would say, and I say that because they're the two that we've seen the most of, to be fair. But I'm not sure which one I'd give it to, because Valenduk, he was attacking in the first half, but he was probably driving sensibly, knowing that he had another full half of the race to go, and obviously without that mistake in the pit stops, he would have been a heck of a lot closer to Malotti, if not in front of him, after the pit stops. But he came out fighting for sure in the second half, and he really, he got past Tim Krul fairly quickly. He certainly closed the gap down to Malotti very quickly, and he put him under pressure. Boy, did he put him under pressure. He really went for that position. Didn't quite manage to get the job done, and once Malotti had ridden the storm, so to speak, of a few laps of very, very intense pressure, he seemed to then regain the measure of Valenduk, and Valenduk just seemed to lose that little bit of extra drive and impetus he had on the attack. So I'm not sure. I'm really undecided whether it be Malotti or Valenduk that would get it, but I think they both equally deserve it for that performance tonight.
Yeah, fantastic performance, I suppose, at either ends of the spectrum. One from Malotti, a very nice defensive drive to keep the BMW behind, because it did look through extensive portions of the race that actually the BMW was the quicker car, but a fantastic drive to keep him behind and just do what he needed to do, particularly on the exit of chicanes, particularly on exiting the slower corners, to keep that BMW, which we know is pretty quick in a straight line. If I had to award myself, I think was a fantastic driver this evening, my driver of the night would actually go to Patrick Track, who won 3 Ginetta, because although his performance wasn't necessarily spectacular, the cameras weren't on him often, I think he really executed a nice strategy, pitting late on to then emerge onto the track and score inside the top 10. Really can show how a clean race with minimal engagement with other drivers, just focusing on your performance, can see you climb the order. But as we move on to next week at Imola, another exciting encounter. Sorry, next week, 2 weeks in time. Sorry, for us, a little bit frazzled from that one, Steve. A fantastic battle we saw this evening. I don't think you can blame me.
No, absolutely not, mate. And great comms as usual from yourself, and really enjoyed that performance from all the guys, and enjoyed streaming that one for SRHI. It's been a pleasure this evening.
So yeah, congratulations to all their drivers on the results this evening. This has been the second round of the second season of Sim Racing Hub International's GT4 Championship. In the booth with me has been Steve Proudly, also operating the cameras. So fantastic job, Steve, on this evening's broadcast. I've been Tim Fulbrook. I look forward to seeing you all at the very next race at Imola. Thank you for joining us, and good night.